Hi, Allison and I are here today to talk about aged care. We've got a lot of our clients inquiring about aged care and being totally lost and confused about the system. I put my mother into aged care several years ago. It was a family decision and the family had to work together to get the right place and the financial situation correct for Mum. Today we're going to concentrate on aged care only. There are other options and Alison will run through those very briefly, but you'll see that it's a very complex area, so we don't want to confuse you with all the other types of things that are available. We'll do that another time. I'm going to get Alison to answer some of the questions that are commonly asked by our clients. Thank you, Alison.
There's a number of options available, and really, as Maureen touched on, it isn't always moving to care. So there can be assistance provided in the home through home care packages, which are a government-based support system, and that can really eliminate or delay the need for someone to move to care. So there can be significant support provided at home for that person, and often that can really assist in the years leading up to moving into aged care. The other option for people who do need more assistance is the move to aged care. So that's for people who really need a lot more support in their day-to-day activities, who have greater medical needs, and also who require just a greater level of care than what can be provided in the home. So there are a number of different fees and charges that apply when someone moves into aged care. The first one is the basic daily care fee. So that applies to everyone who moves into care. It's a non-negotiable fee and it's a fee that everyone has to pay. The next fee is a means-tested fee. So it depends on the person's level of assets and income as to how much they pay for that fee. The higher the level of assets and income, the higher that fee will be. There is a capped amount for the means-tested fee. So there's an annual cap and a lifetime cap, which ensures that the person moving into care doesn't end up paying way too much in that particular fee. The next type of fee is an extra services fee, and that is really dependent on the aged care facility that person is moving to. So different facilities will have different extra services and different fees associated with that. And the last fee, which is probably the one people are most familiar with, is the accommodation fee. And that's really probably what people remember being called the bond. And in July 2014, there were some significant changes to the system which changed the naming and how those accommodation payments could be made. So now what we see is the lump sum accommodation payment being called a refundable accommodation deposit, or a RAD for short. And that amount can also be converted into a daily fee called a daily accommodation payment, or a DAP. Now, that might sound quite confusing, but essentially what it means is there's a lot of flexibility now with accommodation payments. So people can choose to pay a lump sum, a daily payment, or a combination of the two. And that's really where this flexibility has opened up significantly, and it means that people have a lot of choice around how they pay their accommodation costs. This is probably a really commonly asked question when people move into care, because automatically I think people think they need to either sell their home or take all their money out of super to pay for their accommodation costs. Because of the flexibility built into the aged care fee system, we can look at different options where people don't have to necessarily sell their home or don't necessarily have to take their money out of super to pay for their costs of care. There can be significant advantages with paying a lump sum amount, but for people who want to retain the family home or want to keep money in super, then we can look at those options, and sometimes it's much better to balance it out and pay some as a lump sum using existing assets and some as a daily payment drawing from cash flow.
I think estate planning should be done as soon as you can, particularly if you've got an aged parent looking at going into a home. The home itself will require the powers of attorney. You may not be aware, but as of September last year, there were changes to the powers of attorney. We now have 2 powers of attorney. We have medical, which is not changed at all, and we have the powers of attorney of financial and lifestyle. That was previously financial and guardianship. Now, this new legislation goes into some detail about capacity. In other words, whether or not the person is in a state of mind to be able to sign these documents. So it's very important that while you can, you get these into place. The other area is the wills. A lot of people say they have wills, but are they properly executed? Has everything been covered in the will? And has it been witnessed correctly? The third thing that you need to be aware of is your binding death nominations when it comes to superannuation. A couple of recent cases in Queensland showed the consequences of not doing them properly. In other words, what happened in those situations, the wrong people were the recipients.
The aged care system can be really confusing. So the first step we would recommend is to determine eligibility for aged care, and that is done through an ACAS assessment. An ACAS assessment will assess the person's needs, what physical limitations they may have, and whether they are eligible for either respite care, aged care, or a home care package. This test or this assessment can be arranged through the GP or directly through the aged care centre or the aged care website. And it's free of charge. So the one thing to note is that it can have quite a long waiting period in order to receive the assessment. It can be up to around 6 weeks, so we'd recommend doing that as a first step. The second step we'd recommend is seeking advice, because the system is really quite challenging to navigate if you don't understand the aged care system itself, Centrelink, and the impact on tax and estate planning. Seeking advice is going to produce a much better result. It will mean that we can take the stress away from the situation, explain how the aged care system works, and provide recommendations when it comes to how to fund fees, how to support the person's cash flow when they move into aged care, and also looking at the impacts of tax, estate planning, and other issues that might pop up during the course of the aged care journey. There's certainly a number of areas that we can assist with. So the first one being just navigating through the system and explaining how it works. When it comes to looking at fees and how to fund the cost of care, we can assist with providing scenarios. So looking at, do we sell the home? Do we take money out of super? Do we fund the cost through existing bank account balances? We can also do things like assist with the forms, and the paperwork is absolutely extraordinary when it comes to moving into care. Not only is there forms that you need to complete with the aged care facility, there's things like a resident agreement which you'll need to sign when moving into care. And this is something that before anyone signs off on the move to care, we'd always recommend that a lawyer assist with reviewing the actual resident agreement, and that's something that we can do here with our legal team. The other thing that we need to look at is the Centrelink paperwork, because Centrelink and aged care really go hand in hand, and there's an enormous amount of paperwork that really needs to be filled in accurately to ensure that your fees are calculated properly and that the aged pension that you're receiving matches up with what your income and assets are. So that's something that we can take all of that burden away from people and help them with the paperwork, liaise with Centrelink, which can be a significant burden for people, and just help them through that process.
Summing up, as Allison has pointed out, there's lots of flexibility in this area, and to get advice would be a very sensible thing to do. Not only just in helping the paperwork, but also the options that are available and the best financial position for you to take. We've been able to negotiate some of the prices for the old bonds, so that's another area that we can assist in. We've got people here who have the technical ability, but also We've got people who empathise what you're going through. Myself and many other of our staff have gone through exactly what you're going through. So we do understand, and we're here to help.